Hello, good evening, and welcome to UPfront. So it's still our coverage of that big breaking news story. The Bank of Ghana of the Republic of Ghana has actually collapsed 5 different banks and also appointed a new bank established not long ago to take over the assets and liabilities of these banks. I'm sure by now you might have heard that Unibank Ghana Limited, the Royal Bank Ghana Limited, Beige Bank Ghana Limited, Sovereign Bank Ghana Limited, and Construction Bank Ghana Limited their licenses have been revoked, and that means that they've been put together, and all of these banks are going to be under a new bank established by the government of the Republic of Ghana. All of the fallout, what this means for the banking sector, what this means for your deposits with the various banks is what we'll be discussing. Already a press release from the Bank of Ghana is indicating that all deposits of the 5 banks are safe and have been transferred to the new bank called the Consolidated Bank. Customers can carry out their business as usual as their respective banks, which will now become branches of the Consolidated Bank, are very safe. The Bank of Ghana statement is also saying that all staff of these banks will become staff of the Consolidated Bank. Boards of directors and shareholders of these banks, however, no longer have any roles. So that is the latest news coming from the Bank of Ghana. In the last 2 hours, we've been told that 5 banks, we knew they were in distress. We knew there was some difficulty along the line. You do remember that not long ago, KPMG was appointed to deal with and help the Unibank get back on its feet. Apparently, that process did not go as was supposed to be. And the reality on the ground today is that the Bank of Ghana has collapsed all of these 5 banks, revoked their licenses, and there's a new bank in the offing to take care of the assets and liabilities of this bank. This brings to mind what happened in 2017, where the bank UT and Capital Bank went through a similar process. We will be dialoguing on this and many more. Already in the studio with me is a minority spokesperson on finance. But first, we'll take a short break and be back with more on this. Welcome back. My name is Raymond Akwa. This is Upfront, and the big breaking news stories in the last 2 hours is that the Bank of Ghana has actually announced it's taking over the management of some banks in the country. There are 5 of them. The affected banks are Royal Bank, Beige Bank, Sovereign Bank, the Construction Bank, and Unibanks. These banks have been put, their assets and liabilities, put under a new name called the Consolidated Bank. The Bank of Ghana is, however, assuring everybody that your money with these banks are safe, as the bank's directors and shareholders do not have any roles in the new structure that's been put together. Indeed, the Bank of Ghana's move comes just yesterday. The Construction Bank voluntarily folded up its operations here in Ghana, and this comes on the heels of Bank of Ghana also pumping some 5.6 billion cedis bond to protect you, the depositors who have your banks and your monies in these banks. We also understand from the statement the Bank of Ghana has issued that workers of the 5 banks, they are guaranteed that there shall be no job losses. But this is with a caveat, which says in the interim. It's unclear what's going to happen to these people in the longer term and the nearest future. And the Bank of Ghana actually increased the minimum capital requirement for these banks from 120 million to 400 million to improve the stability in the banking industry while growing the sector. You do recall that some of these banks have been pleading with virtually everybody from the president to the vice president to the National House of Chiefs, demanding that they be given a longer period, or they want the 400 million expected of them as capital requirement be waived one way or the other. But that has not happened yet, and the decision has already been taken by the Bank of Ghana. We'll be dialoguing on this particular decision. We'll be talking to the people who run these banks in the course of our conversation. But here in the studios with me is a former Deputy Finance Minister. He's also the spokesperson of the minority when it comes to financial matters in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable Fiscal Atufosin. Honorable, you're welcome to our front.
Thank you very much.
Big news, but were you surprised?
I think to a large extent, yes. I'm surprised because in the case of Unibank in particular, we heard from the grapevine that some understanding is being reached to the extent that the shareholders has promised to capitalize the bank in the coming days. I heard a deadline was given, and I don't know what actually happened for us to hear this news today. And then the likes of Beige Bank is quite a new bank, so I'm surprised what I'm hearing. I'm very surprised about Sovereign Bank and that of the other one, the Royal Bank as well.
Yeah.
So
there's also Construction Bank.
Yeah, Construction
Stephen
Bank.
Koji, who previously was with ADB, is the one who set up this particular bank not long ago. It was launched, fanfare, and all of the pop that goes with it. He's not the owner of the bank. Okay. He's actually running it. Actually.
Okay. But I heard information that as at yesterday, they folded up themselves.
Yes.
So it looks as if they had prior information to this from what we are hearing. Because you cannot fold a bank only for us to hear the next day that the central bank has signed or approved a purchase and assumption transaction with a new created vehicle called a bank, consolidated bank. So clearly, it looks as if the management of that bank in particular had some background information as to what is going to happen today. In itself is something that we are interested, would like to investigate that going forward.
There's a background to all of this. This is because the Bank of Ghana is saying that the measures it's taking above is part of efforts to address legacy problems in the banking sector and to restore the stability and resilience of the financial system. In fact, they believe that while some weaknesses in the sector were attributable to macroeconomic factors, which probably is not the doing of these banks anyway, a trend of poor corporate governance, poor risk management practices, related party transactions that were not above board, and regulatory non-compliance and poor supervision had emerged over the years, leading to a significant build-up of vulnerabilities in the sector.
I think the central bank has come out with their statement. I'm yet to look at the statement in detail. I've read bits and pieces of that. But overall, I'm looking at the impact on the general economy as a whole. And to assess it, what does that mean for the ordinary Ghanaian, and what does that mean for debt and for the economy, the macro in particular. Let me say that the central bank has just announced that the taxpayers' cost as a result of the collapse of these two banks is 5.76 billion Ghana cedis, approximately $1.2 billion. It may not add to the fiscal deficit, but that doesn't make any difference. The difference is that this is going to add to public debt. In fact, what it means is that going forward in future, you and I will have to pay this through taxation.
I'm going to the phone lines pretty soon, but there's a question that's germane to all of this.
Yes.
First, is this the step in the right direction?
You can't conclude that it's a step in the right direction. I can conclude at this stage.
Can you say otherwise too?
I can say that at this stage we will have to get more information. We'll have to assess the situation and come out with our definite position. But I will not conclude that it's a step in the right direction, because considering the economic impact on debt, for instance...
Even when they said that over the years, and of course... I mean,
yes, but over the years...
over the years includes the time that you were Deputy Finance Minister.
That is why I find it very difficult to accept some of these things when they say over the years and just conclude and say that the previous administration tried to say legacy issues and all of that. But let me tell you, they've been in government for about 20 months. This month is the 20th month.
Yeah.
We were told when Unibank, initially when they announced the administration of Unibank, that within 6 months they were going to turn over the bank. What did I say? Turn around the bank.
You said it was impossible. It was less likely to happen.
I told you. We had similar conversation. I said, 6 months, you think you are magicians and you can turn around the bank within 6 months. And say, I bet with you that let's wait and see. After 6 months, we'll hear what they will say. Here are we today. What are we hearing? Approving purchase and assumption agreement to the extent that the state is going to pay 5.76 billion Ghana cedis, approximately $1.2 billion US dollars as public debt. That is not acceptable.
But you should be particularly wowed by some of the things that KPMG found after its review of Unibank, which is in the Bank of Ghana 10-page report. It said Unibank had given out amounts totaling 1.6 billion to shareholders and related parties in the form of loans and advances without due process and in breach of the relevant provisions of Act 930. And this is actually this was done in 2016.
In fact,
you put together.
I pushed this through
very good. The Banking and the
yes,
Special Deposit Taking Institutions Act. In addition, these stakeholders and related parties has also been given amounts totaling 3.7 billion, which were neither granted through the normal credit delivery process nor reported as part of the bank's loan portfolio. They were also not secured with collateral and attracted no interest income for Unibank. Altogether, shareholders and related parties of Unibank had taken out an amount of 5.3 billion, constituting 75% of total assets of the bank. This is a very serious situation.
Of course it is, and I agree with you. This is, if proven that that is the truth, then this is really serious situation. But I've heard contrary statement coming from the shareholders of Unibank.
That what the KPMG put together?
That initially, when the issue came up initially, early days when they raised the issues of corporate governance, Unibank, the management and the owners of Unibank put out a statement to dispute some of this claim. But to be honest, from what I'm hearing and what you've just read to me, that about 5.3 billion were taken from the bank, represent about 75% of the total asset. I think it's something that we'll have to, we are interested in the matter. In the coming days, we are going to look at it carefully and come out with with our statement, because
there's even more that you'd be wild
with. It is really serious.
There's even more that you'd be wild with, but let me go to the phone lines. Give me a moment.
But do you also agree? Okay, after your phone lines.
Yes, but we're also dealing with over 89% of Unibank's loans and advances, book of 3.74 billion as of 31st May 2018 were classified as non-performing. 89% of the bank's loan. Well, let me go to the phone lines and speak to lecturer of economics at the University of Cape Coast, Dr. John Gachi. Thank you for joining us on the phone line now. Doc, was this surprising to you? Was it long incoming? And is it a step in the right direction?
Please, I think the line is very faint. You need to raise your voice.
Forgive me. The question I'm asking is whether this is a step in the right direction. The decision by the Bank of Ghana to revoke license, consolidate these banks, and establish a new one that's going to take over the assets and liabilities in this case. Indeed, government has also coughed up some 5.6 billion in terms of bonds to make sure that depositors are safe. Is this the right action?
Well, I think you cannot be very decisive as to whether what the Bank of Ghana has done is in the right direction or not. Given the fact that Bank of Ghana gave some situational report some time ago, but it seems to me after the KPMG report that such situational reports were not the accurate ones. So we will need to wait until all the information starts coming. Given the fact that Bank of Ghana is a debtor to Unibank, for example. Government of Ghana is a debtor to Unibank. Parties related to government are indebted to Unibank, clearly indicating that they are also contributing factor to the problem of Unibank. If at this point in time, government of Ghana decides to set up a new bank, I'm not even aware whether the people of Ghana who will be paying for this 5.6 billion bond that will be raised are being informed through Parliament that the government of Ghana has decided to set up a limited liability company to involve in the activities of banking. So all these issues need to be addressed before we come to that firm conclusion that Bank of Ghana has done the right thing. Of course, it is the duty of Bank of Ghana to ensure soundness, stability, transparent and very strong and robust banking sector to drive economic activities in the country. But the manner in which it's done will remain questionable for some people.
Okay, so the manner in which this decision and the action has been taken will remain questionable. That's your immediate impression. But mindful of the fact that you've served on the ADB Bank's board in times past, would you, in your own capacity, admit that if Unibank had given out amounts totaling 1.6 billion to shareholders and related parties in the form of loans and advances without due process and in breach of relevant provisions of Act 930, this is clearly a bank that failed to follow what is established not only in law, but as due process?
Well, I think the Bank of Ghana Act provides various provisions that empower Bank of Ghana to take actions in the interest of the banking sector. For example, if shareholders are taking money that depositors have brought for the purpose of banking, it's a clear violation of the Act. if Bank of Ghana take action against those shareholders, there's no problem about that. If they are not following the credit procedure, it's a violation of the Act, not only the new Act, but the previous Act. So if Bank of Ghana take action against those individuals, there is nothing wrong about that. But I have made a specific comment relating to Unibank and relating to the KPMG report. That is the point I'm making. And I need to also put on record, I have never been a member of the ADB board. So clear.
Okay. Okay, well, very much so. Thanks for that clarification. The other understanding we have is that shareholders and related parties of Unibank had taken out 5.3 billion, constituting 75% of the total assets of the bank. How was it possible that a bank and its supervisors could be alive and willing to engage in such a practice? That's what you need to ask the Bank of Ghana to give you that information. Until they put that information forward, nobody knew about it. So as to whether those people who are accused actually agreed to that statement, I don't know. That is a statement Bank of Ghana has made. As to whether it is the absolute truth, I am not aware. But I'm very clear in my mind that just 2 days ago, KPMG, which was actually appointed by Bank of Ghana, indicated that the only way Unibank, for example, can survive is when government and its related agencies pay their indebtedness to Unibank for it to survive. It's interesting, but we are told by the same governor earlier at the press conference that the indebtedness of government and other related agencies in the states do not in any way have a massive toll on what could have been the financial fortunes of this particular bank. Do you have contrary information? Well, if you appointed an important player in the audit realm, KPMG, to do some work for you, and it is that report you are going to rely on. The report indicates that the way forward is to pay that indebtedness because that is the way that bank can survive. I do not think that Bank of Ghana can come forward and say that the statement that has been made by KPMG is wrong and that is not significant to salvage the bank. I would rather go for the statement made by the KPMG unless Bank of Ghana rubbish the report of KPMG and they do not accept the report, and Bank of Ghana needs to put it in the public domain. Now, let me find out from you. It's not only Unibank that's gone under. We're talking about other banks like the Royal Bank. We're also talking about banks which are recently put together like the Construction Bank Limited. We're also looking at Sovereign Bank. Is this an indication that the financial sector, specifically the banking system, had been leaking and be thriving on very weak grounds for a very long time? No, I think it's a known fact that the banking sector was suffering from corporate governance weaknesses. It is also very clearly known that the banking sector, some of the commercial banks were actually not managing their credit issues very well, to the extent that you will be surprised that some known commercial banks don't even have very clear credit policy. So those things are known to all of us. It is that reason why the World Bank, IFC in particular, supported the government of Ghana to come up with a new act which was put into place in September 2016 to address those issues. That is why when you see the new act at 9:30, corporate governance, for example, was given a prominent role in Section 56, and liquidity issues were also given prominent attention in the act. Issues related to credit risk or risk management were also given prominent role. And you also realize that the internal control was given prominent role, including appointment of directors, so the Bank of Ghana even have approval authority for those who will be appointed to the bank to manage commercial banks, all in attempt to ensure a sound system for banks to operate in, to ensure the stability and robustness that is needed to drive economic activities in the country. Those things are known. And I keep on indicating that those banks and directors and individuals who knowingly acted against those provisions, Bank of Ghana provisions are very clear what to be done to those people. Okay. There's no question about that. Okay. But some are saying that it was possible for you to have actually removed directors, also dealt with stakeholders, which you felt had actually breached the rules without taking the bank through the kind of process it is going through now. Is this something that you think it was worth considering?
I didn't get a question, please.
I'm saying some have suggested that it was possible to deal with directors of banks and also other actors in this particular case who acted wrongly without having to dissolve and, in this case, collapse these banks. Is this something that you agree with?
Well, I think some of the issues, especially the influence of shareholders in taking money, are very grievous offenses. I would not want to support that those actions are light to be considered. But some of them, I think that the government of Ghana and its allies contributed hugely. It is the Bank of Ghana, to a large extent, who is supposed to ensure supervision of these commercial banks. It is the Bank of Ghana who has a regulatory oversight of all these institutions. So there is no way Bank of Ghana will be acting as angels in all these matters. And bearing in mind that if you take some of the institutions involved, Bank of Ghana was actually fighting with those institutions regarding ADB, and the Ministry of Finance is also fighting those institutions regarding ADB. And on top of that, you realize the Ministry of Finance also is indebted to that institution. At the same time, Road Fund, Cocoa Board, Bank of Ghana itself as a regulator is also indebted to that institution. That sounds very immoral, but I cannot speak for those banks that have their shareholders dipping their hands into the funds of the bank in a manner that is not allowed by the law. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those that are very, very clear to us that it ought not to be so.
Now, let me come to this point. What I hear you saying is that government cannot absolutely absolve itself of complicity in this particular matter.
That is exactly so. Look at the amount of money Finance Ministry is indebted to Unibank. Look at Bank of Ghana. Look at Cocoa Board. Look at all those agencies. Who is supposed to pay that? Didn't it affect the running of that bank? The answer is yes. Were they not challenged in terms of liquidity? The answer is yes. Who is the regulator? Bank of Ghana. Was the regulator not fighting with Unibank in relation to ADB? Was the Ministry of Finance not fighting with Unibank in relation to ADB? So Unibank case, to me, it is a different matter.
Okay.
That I think we should look at from that perspective.
Separately on this particular point. Now, my final question to you is that much has been said about how we want to reform the banking sector and improve it and also make it as solid as we ought to put it. But there are those who are saying that you cannot do this by holding erring directors and shareholders responsible, as in the directors who partly contributed to this problem ought to be directly held responsible for this canker, and the state should not pump the poor taxpayers' money into saving some of these banks when in reality people can be held responsible.
Well, I think for the state salvaging some of these banks, it's a matter of the people of Ghana deciding through Parliament. Because salvaging the bank is in the interest of the financial sector,
okay,
and it's in the interest of the economy. But how it is done, my point is, you have now all of a sudden established a limited liability company called a Consolidated Bank of Ghana, or Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited.
Yes.
Who gives the authorization for that bank to be established? Was Parliament informed? Was Parliament given approval? Is it not public fund that is going to be used to pump into that?
It is said that the government has established the bank. That is what the statement from the Bank of Ghana is saying.
Exactly. So who authorized the government of Ghana to go and establish that bank? So those are the issues that I think we need to be discussing. But the idea of salvaging the banking sector is the job of the Bank of Ghana, and it's in the interest of the economy of Ghana.
And to your mind, you would think that Parliament should be involved, isn't it?
That is what I'm thinking. Because you are going to borrow 5.6 billion And you are aware what the Financial Management Act is, that every borrowing, the terms and conditions of that borrowing should be approved by Parliament. So you are going to be borrowing this money to service a bank, and the bank is in the interest of the people of Ghana. Such a huge decision ought to be approved by Parliament. That is my thinking.
And certainly, those are questions I'll put to my guests here in the studios. But for now, I appreciate your time on the show. Many thanks to you, Dr. John Gachi. He's a senior lecturer of economics at the University of Cape Coast. I'm back in studio. My guest is the former Deputy Finance Minister in Ghana and also a member of Parliament who speaks for the minority on the finance issues in this country. Now, the question before we go back to what we were discussing is pretty simple. Was the government of Ghana minded by the fact that they had to bring the decision to set up a bank that will be doing some huge borrowing for and on behalf of the people of this country? That decision, was it known to Parliament?
No, not at all. In fact...
you are on the Finance Committee.
In fact...
could they have been done in your absence?
The Finance Minister has made a big disservice to Ghana. Obviously, the media review was read not long ago, less than 2 weeks ago. I was of the view that he could have hinted the establishment of a new bank through a major government policy statement to the people of this republic.
I see.
He decided to keep quiet about it. In fact, I have raised the issues relating to the collapse of UT Bank and Capital Bank over a number of times, so many, almost 6 months. It took the Minister of Finance to present only one paragraph saying that the collapse of the two banks is going to cost the taxpayer 2.3 billion. After a major budget statement was read in November, he failed to make any major announcement on that. So I was of the view of the opinion that the Minister of Finance, through the media review, could have come properly and let the people of this country be aware what is actually going on. Unfortunately, they decided to keep quiet and to keep the people of this country in the dark. But let me also say that at the end of the day, an amount of 5.7 billion Ghana cedis is going to be paid by the taxpayer, not the finance minister, not only the people in government. So it is only fair and prudent for the minister responsible of finance to let the public be aware how much we are going to pay. Yes, he has just announced the 2.3 billion. So the one-off financial sector cost, 2.3 billion today, another 5.7 billion, is going in the region of approximately, let me put it, 8 billion Ghana cedis.
I see.
You know what 8 billion Ghana cedis could have done? 8 billion Ghana cedis could have done a 3-carriageway highway, 3 here, 3 there, Accra Kumasi and Accra to Takoradi.
But is
why
that
can't we use that money?
I think
no. You see, the question here, what I want to find out is this the only option available to government?
Was there alternative?
There are alternatives.
Because in the case of Unibank, we tried with an alternative.
Look. What sort of alternative?
We tried appointing an administrator in the interim.
See, I told you from the beginning that the approach is going to fail in the first place. Announcing a bank going into administration, the bank will never come out. In fact, I've never read anywhere someone telling me that a bank has been announced that is going to go into administration, the bank has survived. It will never happen. It won't happen. Because you have signaled that the bank is on its knees. Who is going to do serious business with that bank that is in administration in the first place for 6 months? People are going to move their capital from the bank. So clearly, that was going to fail. I knew that was going to fail. Unfortunately, the government decided to go that way. The simple question I ask myself is that this is not the first time banks have gone into severe insolvency issues and capital adequacy issues. But let's learn from best practices. Even in America, even in the UK, Royal Bank of Scotland was saved. In Holland, in Germany, Deutsche Bank was saved. The government looked at the general economic impact, vis-a-vis comparing it to the cost to the taxpayer in terms of resolving the bank. So at any point in time, you have to ask yourself a simple question. How much is it going to cost the state in resolving the bank, vis-a-vis how much is going to cost you by giving the shareholders another chance, by probably giving them
that ordinarily we expect the Bank of Ghana to
So we were expecting that the central bank, in addressing the press, they should have let us be aware of some of these options.
And I want to believe that they might have probably gone through all of this process.
No, well, that is your opinion, but as long as the central bank failed to inform the people of Ghana that they did this evaluation, then I ask myself, was this really done? Was this considered in the first place? So far, I don't think it was considered. 5.7 billion fiscal cost is not cheap money. But very importantly, let me raise one important point. Here, in one of the statements, they are saying, page 6, they are saying that over 89% of Unibank loans and advances book of 3.74 billion as at 31st May 2018 was classified as non-performing.
Yeah.
You see, so I want to ask myself, why non-performing? Who are the debtors? Are they not government of Ghana related agencies? And what is the component of that? Is that not the fundamental problem? Is that not what has sent Unibank to where they are today? 3.7 billion. 3.7 billion is not a small money.
Yeah.
Because look, COCOBOD owns them. In fact, Bank of Ghana, according to the KPMG's report, Bank of Ghana themselves, they are debtors to Unibank. In fact, they owe Unibank. So Unibank, in the debtors book of Unibank, Bank of Ghana is one of them. COCOBOD is one of them. COCOBOD is one of them. So Ministry of Finance, Road Fund, and other government agencies.
So,
so what is happening?
To select and identify Unibank as one.
No, I'm going to go there because you asked me. So I'm going to go to the rest.
Because
you see,
in this case, yeah.
I think the reason why we are dwelling on Unibank is that the chunk of the fiscal cost is coming from the Unibank.
Yeah.
You see, out of the 5.7 billion fiscal cost, you can easily say that about 4.3 is coming from Unibank, from what I'm reading here. You see, almost. So that is where the chunk of the fiscal cost is coming from. So the likes of, the other bank, Construction Bank, virtually they have very little asset and very little liabilities. So the fiscal cost will not be that huge. The one relating to Sovereign Bank, it will not be that huge. Probably Beige is another one that we should be worried about because the fiscal cost to the state may also be big because Beige has been around. And considering what they do, there may be huge fiscal cost as well. And then Royal Bank. But the two banks, I don't think their asset and liability books are that huge.
You seem to also tell me that this decision by the Bank of Ghana was not the best one.
I think you've asked me that point time and time and again. I want to say that it is too early for me to conclude whether it's best or not the best in the interest of this country. Because I'm looking at the general economic impact.
Oh, okay.
Okay, issues relating to jobs.
You've looked at economics, okay, but when it comes to jobs, they say that their jobs are secure.
In the interim.
They say that.
In the meantime. So please.
But nobody really has an absolute security of
but
job
let me be blunt here. Let me be blunt here. If you consolidate jobs, at least head office jobs will be consolidated. You won't have two managing directors. You have one managing director. Yeah. Okay. You won't have two head of operations. You have one. So certainly, nobody can convince me that jobs will not be lost. It will certainly happen. There are branches that may be merged in the first place, which is prudent. So these are things that is going to happen anyway. Job security is an issue. Job creation is an issue in this country, and we've been talking about it. So let us not ignore the fact that jobs will certainly be lost. It will certainly happen. It's something that is inevitable because consolidating 5 banks, the outcome will mean that certain jobs will certainly be lost. So I'm not concentrating on Unibank, but I'm trying to let you be aware of the general picture, the economic impact. Yes, the central bank has come out to announce something. It is our job to evaluate the impact on the general economy.
So first, you start with the economy. How about the banking sector?
Yes, the banking sector is fragile, as we are all aware. I'm surprised that one of the banks, because from what I heard, prior to the announcement, I thought there's going to be a 6th bank. I don't have to mention the name of the bank. It's not necessary in the interest of the bank. Because
Which bank are you talking about?
It's not necessary because I'm saying that from what I heard.
Possibly Prudential Bank?
It's something that is for the people, central bank to say. But I'm getting worried about it. Are they being picky? Because yes, the bank in question, their situation is even dire than some of the banks that are collapsing today. They were more or less at par with Rare Bank. And that's the general question I want to ask. Why did they decide to remove one of the banks at the last minute? Why? Is that a question? I think these are very serious questions that we, the people of this country, we have to be interested in and ask the right questions. In the meantime, it's 5.
But
you see, I thought, you see, yes, the governor, I heard him assuring us that the government of Ghana is going to intervene in the banks that are owned by the state, like ADB and NIB. Yeah. What happens to the rest?
What we've not been told what happens to the rest.
So I also heard in the grapevine that GN Bank is going to merge with another bank.
Yeah.
I think GN Premium and another one, they are merging. So far, I've not heard any news on Prudential Bank, for instance, and the others. So I'm curious. I want to know what is happening to those banks as well.
Business people take loans from these banks. What happens to these people?
Yes. What happens after the purchase and assumption transaction, for instance, they are going to evaluate those debts. Some of them are performing and others are not performing. In fact, in the books of the bank, they are assets of the bank. So, and you will notice that the governor said that some of the assets will be evaluated. Some of them will go into the new bank, the consolidated bank, and then others will go to the receivers. Yeah. They are going to see if they can get the money. And if they get the money, then they will
So if I had a loan from any of these banks, and we have fixed terms and fixed rates involved, would that have to be reviewed too?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because per the purchase and assumption transaction, they are taking over the assets that are performing as agreed.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think eventually they will have to sit with them, and then even if they are going to review it, they can't do it unilaterally. They will have to work together with the customers concerned.
For a bank that has 89% of its loans and advances, which is something around underperforming, what happens in that case?
It's really serious. 89%. I mean, it means that if you have 100 million, only 11 million is what they are servicing.
Yes.
I mean, unbelievable.
It sounds strange.
Unbelievable. And it's something that I'm curious. I want to know the breakdown of those underperforming loans.
Those who took the loans?
Yes.
Don't they have some level of protection?
Yes. Look, it's also important for us to know the breakdown. Who are the culprits? Is government also involved? And why is government also not doing that? Who are the chunk? I mean, the main customers, the big ticket. We had COCOBOD, 222 million. Okay. We had Road Fund, another 300 and something million. We had Ministry of Finance themselves. So from what I read, government of Ghana and its allied agencies put together, you're talking about $1 billion. Is that all, or there are more? You see,
the question I wanted to know about this
issues that we have to be interested in.
Well, the money which is currently deemed non-performing, and these are loans to be effective, people are not paying the loans or servicing the loans in this case. What happens to the loans? Is the new team taking over?
Oh, they are going to pursue it.
They are going to pursue
They are going to pursue those loans. The receivers and the current bank, they are going to pursue it. They're going to pursue it.
What's the likelihood of being able to retrieve
those ones with collateral? Then they will come after your collateral.
I see.
Yes. In fact, I'm going to, as a member of Parliament, I'm going to ask the Minister of Finance and the Governor of Bank of Ghana to appear before Parliament to give us better and further particulars about this 5.7 billion. And if there's any way Government of Ghana can take any action to reduce the fiscal cost to the state, because 5.7 billion Ghana cedis isn't a small money. It's big money. Okay,
that's interesting. We hope to see how that query goes in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana.
Yes.
But it's interesting how even Beige Bank Limited also had performed when it comes to the loan portfolio. It had 72% non-performing loan ratio, equally huge.
Yeah.
How can banks possibly sit down and have this huge non-performing loan ratio?
You see, again, and I strongly think that government is culprit. You're
in this particular case too?
Who are those? Mostly are government contractors.
Really?
Mostly. They're government contractors.
Says it's paying contractors.
I don't think, because
says that advanced so much money. Even in the media review,
unfortunately,
it was one of the touted successes of the government.
I challenged that during the debate and said that, look, the evidence available to us through their own data, the summary of economic performance for 17 and 18
from the Bank
half year. No, from the Ministry of Finance data, doesn't suggest to us that government is paying contractors. In fact, government is cutting down on expenditure. Let me give you some typical example. Road Fund. Road Fund is supposed to have a huge budget. Through the Capping and Realignment Act, Road Fund money, approximately 400 million, has been taken away from them. How did they pay contractors out of that? They can pay.
I see.
They've awarded contract with the hope that that is going to come because they are multi-year contract. That money is going to come for them to pay. Get Fund is on its nails. Why? Because of capping. Get Fund is supposed to get about 1.4 billion. Unfortunately, they are getting 4 billion, for 400 million. Yeah. So $1 billion of Get Fund money is not going to get.
The Minister of Education is suggesting
that
they should reduce that particular capping to 25%.
Well, until that happens.
Would you agree?
Until that happens,
is there something? In the right direction?
In the first place, they don't have to cap education and health. My opinion.
Okay.
In the first place, they don't have to cut education and health. Why do you cut health insurance? Why do you cut education? Education budget going into the infrastructure part of education delivery is being cut. So that is where the difficulty is. So they erred in the first place by cutting education budget. 2 years in a row, Get Fund has been denying resources approximately 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. So what is happening? That is going to impact on banks and contractors. If they impact on contractors, automatically it's going to impact on banks. This is what is happening because they take the money from banks. That is what we are seeing. Let me take you to this Assembly Common Fund. Same thing is being capped and aligned. So what happens? That contractors working in assemblies are not getting the money. They needed money to be able to pay. They are banks. They are debt. So what happens? Banks are going down. This is what is happening. When you take the road budget in the actual budget statement, you notice that in the past we used to have what we call road arrests. Every year we were allocating 300 to 500 million Ghana cedis yearly for road arrests. It's been cleared off. So no road arrests paid in the last 2 years. What is happening? Capital budget going down. And that is why you notice in the budget statement that the capital budget as a percentage to GDP is dropping from 4.6% of GDP in 2016 to approximately 2% in 2018. This is what is happening. So we are seeing the impact here.
There's a statement I want you to explain. I mean, in the case of the construction bank, the claim by the Bank of Ghana is that the bank is not able to access investment purportedly made in its name with other financial institutions. The Bank of Ghana is therefore concluded that the total of 80 million Ghana cedis of the bank's 120 million initial paid-up capital is unavailable to the bank for its operations, leaving an amount of 40 million for it to operate with. In fact, they have requested for that. We're talking about the construction bank, the bank shareholders to recapitalize it to the minimum capital required at the time of its licensing. While the shareholders submitted plans to the Bank of Ghana, these plans have not yielded any success. So the claim was that they had made investments with other financial institutions, but the Bank of Ghana says these amounts the claim was paid up was not available. So in effect, they really had only 40 million.
In the first place,
yeah,
I think the 400 million capitalization in itself is too large for some of these banks to be able to survive.
But it's not what's supposed to sustain and improve the financial sector.
Chief, 400 million is too large. I think we've made this point time and time and again.
Yeah.
For those small banks, they could not hack 400 million, about 100 million US dollars. They couldn't. They can't. So my opinion, I said that earlier, that yes, I was of the view that we don't surround the banking sector also to for foreigners and to the large multinationals. We should be able to tier it into tier 1, 2, and 3, where you can have those small banks also in the system. Because clearly, those small banks also has a major role to play in the economic development. Some of them, SMEs, small, medium enterprises, banks with the small banks. GN Bank, for instance, is playing a major role in this country. A role that ordinary banks will not like to play. Like the big multinationals like the Stanchart, Stanbic, Barclays, EcoBank, they won't like to play that. Go to the villages, rural Ghana. GN Bank is almost everywhere. Almost every district capital, they are there, mobilizing resources and giving advances in the form of loan to these SMEs in village and town enterprises. They are giving them those kind of facilities. So you cannot also say that you want banking to be a privileged sector business for those who are privileged. No, you don't do that. You have to allow those small banks also to exist in a way of ensuring that those small businesses are also banked and they have opportunity to get advances. So I think the 400 million itself was very problematic. So a new bank coming in, let's say in 2016, with a hope to survive, You slap 400 million. How do you expect them to get 400 million if, for instance, they are going to start with? They can't get that capital. No wonder. What was the name? Is it Construction Bank?
Yes.
Construction Bank.
Yeah.
No wonder that Construction Bank decided to fold up, because they can't get it in the first place.
But the claim was that they were purporting to have made investments.
But were they told?
But the amount of money was
were they told? You see, they were coming in at the time when the stated capital was how much was that? I think it was 120 million. Yes. 120 million. They had started with, let's say, 80 million. Okay? Yes. And all of a sudden, it has moved from 120 million to 400 million. How do you expect them all of a sudden with a new bank to be able to mobilize another 400 million? They couldn't have got that in the first place. So I'm not surprised. In the case of Construction Bank, I'm not surprised they are out of the system.
Now, there's a peculiar situation with the sovereign bank. In fact, the Bank of Ghana says the promoters of the bank have actually been asked to submit their shares to the bank, and the directors representing the original shareholders have since resigned. The problem there was that it was licensed as an universal bank in 2016 and began operations in 2016. As part of the Bank of Ghana's investigations into the failure of the Capital Bank, currently in receivership, it emerged that sovereign bank's original and initial capital contributed by its shareholders was funded from transfers from Capital Bank, which had been presented to the Bank of Ghana as investments on behalf of the bank. Subsequent to this licensing, a substantial amount of the bank's capital was placed with another financial institution as an investment for the bank. The bank has, however, not been able to retrieve this amount from the investment firm which it was placed, and it's meant that the investments were liquidated by the shareholders and parties related to them. Following inquiries by the Bank of Ghana, the promoters of the bank admitted that they did not pay for the shares they acquired in the bank.
Oh my God. This is criminal in the first place. It's criminal. I mean, if it's proven that is the truth, it's criminal. I've heard that the owners of Sovereign Bank has something to do with Unibank, the other bank.
The Capital Bank.
Capital
Bank. That's what the Bank of Ghana is saying here.
So the two banks are related.
Okay.
So they were taking money from one bank to another bank.
Yeah.
I think these are serious issues. And I think beyond the talk, I think the central bank must act accordingly.
Do specifically what?
They have to act and find out if there are elements of criminality in all of the banks. And then deal with it. That one will support them. Will support them. You remember, I was the first person who raised the issues.
When it came to Capital Bank, you raised this particular issue.
Yes. I've raised the issues on Capital Bank. I've raised the issues on UT Bank. I won't change my position.
But when you raised the issues about some 2 billion, which were supposed to, which we are now funding as a state through some form of bond, and that we're supposed to chase the owners and directors of this bank, that did not happen really.
I heard they were invited
to EOCO.
By EOCO, and I don't know what happened afterwards. Unfortunately,
but we are still paying for it.
Yes, government of Ghana, we are servicing the debt as we speak. Unfortunately, informations are not forthcoming. The government is not giving us information. The Ministry of Finance is not giving us information. The governor is not giving us information. I thought in announcing something like this, they had a wonderful opportunity to give us background. What has happened with the first two that collapsed? Give us details and the actions they are taking, and then announce this one.
I see.
I think that is what they should have, because they owe the people of Ghana that responsibility. Unfortunately, they have decided to ignore it.
But it's stated that the Capital Bank is receivership. What you mean by what has happened is attempts to retrieve the money.
Attempt to receive the money, to retrieve the money.
Doesn't sound like they will do so, because really.
You see, in the case of Capital Bank, we had some assets that the management and then the owners were using shareholders' capital. Or shareholders, they are using depositors' money to acquire. What is the outcome as we speak? Have they been able to identify any? These were news that were being circulated on social media. Were they really the truth? Have they verified them? Have they been able to acquire some of them to defray some of the debt? I think these are issues.
You are in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Has it occurred to you that you need to summon the finance minister, or most importantly, the Bank of Ghana governor, to explain some of these issues and give direct answers to this matter?
In fact, prior to the media review, we engaged the governor, and let me say that it was a very interesting conversation. We had a very frank discussion with the governor on some of this issue.
Did he give specific information that you are requesting?
He gave us some basic information relating to the collapse of the two banks, and then the approval they gave for the purchase and assumption transaction for JCB. So we asked some questions. They failed to give us some detail as to Unibank and the 4 banks that has just been collapsed. They failed to give us that information. We probed further because obviously we've heard others in the grapevine. Yeah. In fact, today I'm even hearing that if care is not taken, they will, in the coming days or coming months, they will have no choice than to announce some few banks also going to the same line. Whether they will have to create another special purpose vehicle and give it to them, or they will join this Consolidated Bank of Ghana, Ghana Limited. It's another matter.
I see.
It's another matter. So we engage them. In fact, we've engaged the Finance Minister, the Honorable Ken Oforiatta, on some of these issues. The only difficulty is when you meet them and you ask for questions, the answers doesn't come as you would like it to come, because I believe that in discussions like this, we all have a responsibility to engage in a very frank discussion, frank conversations for us to know what exactly is wrong with the financial sector.
Mindful of what has just happened, would you be willing to invite them and call them back in?
It's inevitable. I'm going to make the request through the chairman of the Finance Committee right from here, and then I know he's someone who has worked at the central bank before, and he will be also interested in the matter. So I strongly believe that in the coming days, the Finance Committee of Parliament will be engaging the Governor of the Bank of Ghana and the Finance Minister for us to deliberate on issues that we are hearing today.
Do you think this is the last we'll hear of these takeovers, these appointments of administrators? And because we're told that when UT Capital Bank happened, it was going to be the last war to end all wars on the financial front.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I say this because the situation in itself is very fragile, in the sense that 400 million Ghana cedis capitalization is quite a chunk of money. I still think that some of the banks may not be able to raise the needed capitalization to meet the deadline. And if they fail to do that, then the inevitable will happen. They will go through the same route. I heard that Royal Bank was in discussion with Prudential Bank to merge. So now that the Royal Bank is gone, who is going to merge with Prudential Bank? I think it's a bigger question we have to ask ourselves. And what happens to the fate of Prudential Bank? They will now have to get some money to be able to capitalize, or they will have to find a new partner to merge with. I think it's a bigger question, and whether they will be able to do that is another question. There are other new banks in the system. We know Heritage and the others. They are also very young and new in the system. I've heard the announcement of GN and the Premium Bank and Sahel. It's also very important one as to whether if you add all of their assets put together, whether they will meet the 400 million. It's another matter. I think I've not had opportunity to compute using their past financial report to be able to compute.
There's a question that you need to answer. Yes. Did the NDC government, you were Deputy Finance Minister, leave a huge debt in this area for these banks? Is the genesis of this problem traced back to the John Dramani Mahama administration and its dealings with banks, borrowing from the local market in the way that it made the banks virtually impaired by the time he left office? You see, government did not leave a debt. Not at all? Banks. Not even a peso? You see, if a new government comes in, and we've heard in the announced video when someone said the NDC contractors will not be paid, presuppose that everyone who worked under President Mahama's regime is an NDC contractor, and so we won't pay you. This is what we see. I see. Because they have worked legitimately. People have worked at the cocoa sector. They needed to be paid. They've done the job. They've gone to the banks for loans. Because of politics, no one wants to pay them. This is what we will see. If you've worked at this assembly, worked at Get Fund, worked at Road Fund, and nobody wants to pay you as a result of capping or, in quote, tagging, what happens? This is what we'll see. So I would not say it's because of legacy problems. It's because of policies that this government is implementing. If you decide to cap all statutory funds, if you decide to say that you are not paying contractors, this is what we see. My final question to you in this case will be, of course, still on whether or not the NDC in any way contributed to the current position that we are in. Is this at the instance of the IMF? Is the decision to take these banks through all of this process at the instance of the IMF?
You see, I know the IMF never said anywhere that the capitalization should be 400 million.
Okay.
In fact, when we engaged the IMF, they said 400 million they think is even far-fetched.
Really?
Yes, that is the conversation they informed us at the finance committee when we met them, that they think the 400 million is a bit too much, but that is the decision of government. I know the IMF requested for the asset quality review test, and for us to be able to evaluate the banks that are in distressed position and those that are not in distressed position, and for us to find a way to resolve the issue. Same as the other one, the SOEs, the state-owned enterprises. We had to do a major review of the SOEs. As a result, particularly those relating to the energy sector, we decided to issue the Energy Sector Levies Act. Okay, get Parliament to approve it, get the revenue flow to liquidate the debt going forward. So we took action on that one. We left office before this one was implemented. But I strongly believe that we would have handled it differently. We wouldn't have gone through this journey, because this is really painful. The impact on the economy is very severe.
Honorable, I'm told my time is up, and forgive me, but we're here to we have more on this particular issue because it's just developing, and more of the angles will be coming up in the coming days. Well, folks, that's where we tie the nice ribbons on today's edition of Upfront. My name is Raymond Akwa. My guest is a deputy, former though, finance minister and the minority spokesperson on finance. You also heard economist John Gachi early on in our conversation. Stay good.